Welcome to the Monday Monologue. This week's main topic is subjective testing of audio equipment. Okay, it's easy to put something on an analog scope, and especially something like this Analog Discovery 2, where you hit a button and it just prints a graph with numbers. That stuff's easy to see. But when it gets to subjective listening and deciding whether something sounds good, it's like opinions. Everybody's got one. And it's just another thing that, it's a controversial topic. I mean, it's hard for people not to get personally invested in equipment they own or stuff they've been listening to for a long time. And I'm trying to be as honest as I can. But again, I go into things with biases, and I'm not going to deny that. But an example of why I feel like I'm being pretty critical about listening was on my final video of the phono stage. The new one that I built that had higher quality components in it, and it was more thought out and had the board separated, and I really anticipated it sounding much better than the original one I built. Well, after I listened to it for a while, it didn't sound as good. And it would have been easy for me to say, oh yeah, well this new one's, it's got to sound better. It doesn't have China components in it. It's got better resistors. It's got better capacitors. It has to sound better. And that was the bias that I went into it with, but I realized that it just doesn't. And I had to figure out why. And I think the same thing holds true on the A12 amplifier that I just reviewed that's become kind of a contentious topic. And I see people on forums and in some of the comments, people getting defensive about, oh, I've been using this thing for, a year. It sounds great. Well, if you don't have something to like A, B, and have two different ones to listen to, it's easy to get lost in just like, hey, that sounds pretty good. Or that, I like the way that sounds. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not trying to tell you should throw away some gear because I don't think it sounds good. The whole point of all of this is that it's entertainment, it's enjoyment. If you like it, great. There's people that just absolutely hate clip speakers. I love the way they sound. And so that's just another case of subjective personal opinions. We have to get past that. And again, I try to just be honest with how I see things. And we're going to be doing the same thing with these preamps. There may be people that like the way the little 6S and 7 sounds better than this one. But again, I'm going to have to first, get a system that I can hook it all up with so I can A/B them pretty easily and try to be honest about which one I think sounds the best and like where it may be lacking and then work on fixing that. And that's just part of this process. And part of it is doing actual measurements with a scope and looking at waveforms and taking distortion measurements and trying to do things to improve it. So that's what this channel's about. And some of that part of it is difficult. It's not all cut and dry. It's not all the lowest distortion wins. And there's things that come into play that you really can't measure. Like, I don't think you're going to measure the difference in coupling caps, but I know they make a difference. And I know they change in sound after they've been run for a while. And that's a controversial topic. There's people that just swear there's no way the capacitor can change. Well, I know they do. And so that's the sort of thing that, hey, there's just going to be a variety of opinions on. The other thing that I want to see if anybody out there has got one of these Noob Sound 6P1s that's unmolested. never had anything done to it, or would want to ship one to me and pay for the parts and the shipping to modify it, I would like to do a better video series on this little amp on how to do my modifications. This was the first thing that kind of kick-started off this channel, and honestly the video is kind of shitty. It's just not, it's not in the style that I developed into. Of I'd like to do this in a very detailed, step-by-step, and it can be done in 2 or 3 videos because it's only a few resistors and a capacitor changed out. But I'd like to show doing that for people that aren't do-it-yourselfers or can read schematics well, and I can show them how to do it. And I'd be happy to modify one for somebody if they want to send it to me. And this thing's not super heavy, but it's it still could end up being $50 to ship it back to you depending on where you live. So take that into consideration. And I won't charge any labor. The parts are probably $10, so it wouldn't be a big expense. Makes a huge difference. But I'd like to have an unmodified one too, because at the time I didn't have the Analog Discovery 2 to be able to run the before and after distortion numbers. And I think that would be really fun to show the difference in the power output and all of that. And because this really is a good sounding amp, guys. If you've got some efficient little, 95 plus decibel speakers and you only need a watt of good power, this thing will put out a really clean 1.2 watts of power that's very musical sounding. Plus it uses 6SN7 tubes, which there's a million different ones to roll into this amp. So anyway, I'd love to do an updated video on this thing, but I don't want to buy another one of these amps. So somebody's got one, let's hook that up and do a quick video series on that. I do have a fun theory that I've developed about SE amplifiers, and I'm starting to see a pattern developing in all the ones that I've built, worked on, and tuned. And I'm not quite there yet to be sure that my theory's right, but I will know next week. So little teaser for the next A12 video. When these parts come in, I'm going to try something. And I've already experimented on this theory a little bit, and once again, it seems to be right. And so the last thing I was going to discuss is, if you're going to be doing much of this do-it-yourself kind of stuff, it's worth buying a nice soldering iron. This is the nicest one I've ever owned. It's a little Heiko. It's a FX888D. Got it off Amazon. It's a little over $100. I love it. Turn it on, it heats up quick, shows you the temperature here. It's a higher wattage than I've had before, but it's also temperature regulated. And you can set it for different temperatures for, working on different stuff. The little stand's awesome. It's got, I used to have to use this thing that had the little gold, whatever you call that stuff, woolick and stuff, steel woolick and stuff in here. This one, it's got it right there. It's also got a little pad here that you can, with a little well that you can put some water in and keep a little wet foam pad there. Don't need to have this thing on my bench anymore. And so, this thing's awesome. Plus, it's got easily replaceable tips. This little flat tip it comes, or chisel tip it comes with, works great. You can get a little needle point tips, and they change out real easy. Anyway, this is something that didn't know how nice it was to have a really nice soldering iron. I was using like a little cheap Weller one that was probably half this price, and it took forever to warm up. I don't think it was temperature regulated. It just had kind of a rheostat on it, and yeah, it wasn't anywhere near like this unit is. So anyway, I think that's it for this week's Monday Monologue. I'm up to 1.75K subs, which is awesome. Yay! And thank you all that have donated to my website or bought merch. all the money that comes in from donations goes to buy stuff like this or parts, and helps keep this channel rolling. I also really, really, really want to thank the folks that have been drop shipping me things to review, modify, and then ship back to them. That will help me keep this channel just rolling. And this really is just a hobby for me, and so it ends up helping support my hobby. And by doing these videos, that helps me get stuff to work on, so that I'm not just spending money buying gear that is piling up in a closet somewhere. People are actually getting to use my stuff, and I'm getting to share this stuff. And I enjoy teaching folks how to do stuff that they may or may not know how to do. So, if you enjoy my channel, please subscribe. Please like the video. And we'll see you next week for the Monday Monologue.